tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
All right. Hello. A little garbage for the day. Welcome to the Incorporated After Show, Season 1, Episode 4, Cost Containment. I'm Adrian Snow. You can follow me on Twitter,
Twitter.
Someday, Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. That's MSADRIANSNOW. And here's my co-host.
Hey, I'm Chris Howard. You can reach me at Chris Howard Live on Twitter and Instagram, and maybe Twister one day.
Twister one day.
Sounds like
I'm calling it.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, probably going to be a dating app. Oh,
Probably.
All right, so we're reviewing Episode 4, Cost Containment. I'm all tongue-tied today. So what were your first thoughts?
That's not coming from my...
Do you guys have one of your phones open?
Is that
your phone.
That's my phone that's broadcasting simultaneously.
You just like hearing yourself, Chris.
Right?
I think that's it. The funny thing is I turned it off right when we started. And then it was like, what the hell's going on? And then it was talking to us. Yeah.
No worries. I was like, that's not me.
So you just get it twice the fun when you hear that.
Yes, indeed. All right.
You were saying...
just your first thoughts on this episode.
First thoughts on the episode. You know what? I really like the series. I enjoy the series. So I cheated a little bit because they sent us the promo pack, so I watched 5 episodes ahead. So I have to kind of play dumb sometimes. But I went back and watched this episode again, and it's building and building and building. So I'm only one ahead of it, but.
Yeah.
I'll keep restrained. But I love the episode. I like the introduction of Elena to the past and how they really grew up and seeing that seeing the progression of things. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, you kind of get an idea of how they ended up where they are now. Just like a hint of it, the start of it.
Right.
So that was nice to see as well. I really enjoyed this episode. I've kind of been complaining about like the show maybe not having enough. I don't feel like I have enough
diversity.
Investment. I mean investment in the characters,
right?
Just in terms of how they've been written. But this show kind of helped me. It fleshed them out a little bit more, which I appreciated.
Right.
So we actually started with a really interesting commentary.
I do hear what you're saying, though. If it's too one-dimensional, it's hard to get into.
Yeah, it's just hard to, because they're dealing with a lot of big topics, and so if the characters aren't there in terms of strength, then it's hard to stay invested in the show.
Right, and we are seeing some more of that.
Yeah, we are, so that's good. But we started with, a really interesting commentary on just, where the United States is in 2074 with the Third World commercial of, it's set in China.
How was that?
I thought that was great because I think that's something that I think present day Americans never consider that is always a possibility. No matter how big you are, you can always get to a point where you are considered an quote unquote a third world country because it's something that the whole idea of first world, third world is very much an American United States type of thing to say anyway. So
right, it just is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great to see, that's how it could be on the other side. And I thought that was delightful they put that in there. But that kind of opens it up.
It's reality based though. It's like
I mean it's very structured off of any type of commercial you'll see where they're talking about children in Africa or they're talking about any type of poverty stricken country. So if that is the direction America goes, and the same commercials will apply to us. So I thought that was really great. But we do start with Ben and Laura, and they are having a baby. I also watched the promo, so I was a little disappointed because I didn't actually get to see how the baby looked because the specs weren't there yet. But just in terms of that relationship and of Ben's decision to go on male birth control. What were your thoughts on that?
That's wild. Okay, I didn't even pick up the male birth control part, but I think it's a good idea. I think men have to take responsibility somewhere.
Oh yeah.
No, it's. I think that's a real deal. I think they're really coming up with male birth control right now too.
They actually have started test trials for male birth control.
How's it working?
They stopped the trials because it was making the men too depressed. And, as a woman, I'm like, well,
I've been dealing with that forever.
Because birth control messes with your hormones. So, but, so they've kind of stopped it for a little bit, but we'll see. Maybe in 2020.
Interesting.
It'll come back.
Certainly by 2074.
Yes, by 2074, it'll definitely be around. But in any case, so just the whole idea of him deciding to go through with the baby, but also kind of knowing that he's still going to pursue this lead on Elena, that she is still alive, which we discovered at the end of last episode.
Right.
How did you feel about the whole idea of him kind of hiding this big thing from Laura and proceeding to have the baby? Like, they go to the hospital, they have the test done. She discovers that he's a little bit of a lie,
Right.
or he gives a little bit of truth about how he got malaria and lead poisoning and all of that. So
Yeah, no, I think it's, it's all a farce, right? Like, he's there because he wants to get up to the 40th floor, and he's, so the relationship is pretty much a sham. Like, if I were in Laura's position, the thing is, she doesn't know. So
Yeah.
he's playing her. He's playing everybody there. So how do I feel about it? I mean,
well, just in the context of this episode. So in terms of like with the baby and the
I just think it's. I mean, but even just within the context of this episode, I think it's hard to feel real sympathetic for him.
Yeah.
Because he's playing his wife. She looks like a nice enough gal, you know, and it's like
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough to be. And she wants to have a baby, and she's in love, and he's really not.
Well, I don't know if he's not in love. I would say. Well, I should say this. I don't think he doesn't not love her. He may not feel strongly for her.
I think.
Like, he may not be romantically in love with her, but he does have like a love and a care for her. He doesn't
He
necessarily, decide to take birth control behind her back easily. Like, yes, it's something he's going to do, but episode before, he was all gung-ho for like, okay, well, then I'll have the baby and that'll be my life, before he realized Elena was still
Before he thought
around.
there was a chance of the other one.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's kind of like, he's not going to let her walk in front of a bus. He cares about her, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he does have trust me, I've never been on Ben's side when it comes to the Laura and Ben relationship. I'm like, does divorce still exist? How can she get out of this?
But he would be stupid to divorce her, because she's his meal ticket. She's, if Elena never comes to fruition, if nothing ever happens with Elena, he's at least got his place in the company.
Well, I think even if they were to get divorced, he would still have a place in the company. It is difficult because her mom is essentially like the CEO of the company.
Right.
But it seems like how the company's set up, how Spica is set up, is that anyone is replaceable. So I don't think she's necessarily his meal ticket. Like, she's certainly helpful to have on his side, but at the end of the day, like, if she decides she wants to leave him, and that's why I'm so curious as to like how that does work. Like, can people get divorced?
That's
Like,
what I was
happens?
going to say. Have we seen any divorced people? I don't think we have yet.
We haven't seen any. Well, no, we haven't seen any divorced people. I think Elizabeth, her mom, is widowed, and I don't think Julian, Dennis Haber's character, is married. So
are you either dead or, because like she's widowed, I wonder how.
Yeah.
And when you leave the company and they what do they do? Their non-disclosures. It looks like
they're NDA, yeah.
Yeah. What's that? Killing them or wiping their memory, or one or the other?
Either or, I think.
Yeah, either one. Whichever.
Yeah, whichever one works. No, because I don't think Roger's married. No, he's not married. So it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, well, I don't think you necessarily have to be married to be in the company. But what do you do should you want to get out of your marriage?
Right.
So, but with that said, like, they didn't do too much with Laura this particular episode. So it was nice to see them kind of like touch upon it. But hopefully by next episode they'll flesh her out a little bit more, and we can kind of deal with like some of her
I feel sorry
backstory.
for her. I mean, she just seems to be, you would hope she looks like she's seriously engaged in the relationship, and you'd hope that somebody would be as much in love with you as you were with them, and that their motives would be pure.
The same.
Yeah, or the same.
Yeah, I mean,
you would hope, but I guess maybe that's not reality.
I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on the relationship. I think I've certainly been in relationships where I felt fully invested, and maybe the other person wasn't, and vice versa. So.
Right.
If I had been in a relationship where both of us were at the same time fully invested, then I'd probably still be in that relationship.
There you go. So there's a reason for everything.
There's a reason for everything.
This is part of her evolution.
Indeed. Indeed. But just to go a little bit further, we go on to Theo. And Theo's now like the prime fighter for Terrence. And we discover that by being the prime fighter for Terrence, that doesn't mean that you just get to fight. That sometimes you have to be the brawn, and you have to kind of go out and
Like
hurt people.
a goon.
A goon,
Yeah.
yeah. So he has to. I can't remember the kid's name, but he has to go after this kid who's just got a basketball scholarship. And so he can get out of the green zone, or out of the red zone finally, and he has to break his leg because I don't remember quite clearly, but I think his parents owe Terrence
Well,
money.
it was the kid that would be competing with him wanted to take him out. It's kind of like a Tanya Harding situation.
Oh, okay, I see. So Terrence had like a loyalty in that regard. Yeah, so that was it was nice to see Theo kind of have to really consider whether or not he wanted to become that person.
Kind of the test of his morals, yeah.
And when faced with it, that the kid was such a fan of Theo.
Such a nice guy.
Yeah, and that it threw him for a bit, and that he had to end up he ended up not originally wanting to do it and wasn't going to do it, which I thought was really nice to see, because it's like, well, you don't want to turn everyone evil.
And you don't want to think that the circumstances, just because you're living in poverty and that's going to turn you evil.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't. Yeah.
People have choices, and
exactly.
wherever they are. Yeah.
You don't want it to be like a scandal situation where like season 3 and everyone's evil, but everyone's evil on that show now.
I watched the first season, loved it, and I can't watch the second.
Yeah, well, everyone's killed somebody by now, so they're all bad.
Perfect.
Spoiler for Scandal. So he ends up taking the kid out for a drink, and Terrence approaches him. He's like, "You have to either hurt this kid or we're going to kill this kid." And so he takes him out into the back and throws some money at him and tells him to run. But I thought this was a really interesting commentary, and let me know what you think about it, of well, when you're already poor and you really have nowhere to run, like what is he going to do? It's not enough money to really build a whole new life. It's not like when you're in the red zone, you get many opportunities to get out of the red zone.
Right.
Like that scholarship was his way out. And we kind of learned that a little bit more when we get to Elena.
That's such a big dream. He's been working for
That's such a big dream, yeah. And so if he doesn't have the green zone to go to, and he doesn't have his family, then essentially he has nothing. So that's a big choice for him to say, well, then go ahead and break my leg. Because if it's you breaking my leg or not having my family.
Yeah, what's the alternative? Take this little bit of cash and leave your family.
Exactly.
You don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And you got to live on the run. And it's like...
Yeah, I thought that was just a really interesting commentary about, like, well, a lot of times when people are in hard times, it's like, well, at least I have my family, you know? So for the kid, I can't remember his name, the kid to just be like, well, then fine, you're taking away, like, my future, but at least I'll be here with my family.
Right.
I thought that was a really interesting...
It's an interesting choice to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not, how would you feel if you had this huge, bright future ahead of you? It gets yanked away.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then you're given the choice to go live with a few bucks. I think he probably made the choice that he'd have to make.
Yeah. I mean, because it's not like that money would make his life any better.
Back. If he fights back, they're going to come and get him. He has no chance.
He has no chance. It's either you go on the run, and even if you go on the run, you have nothing. If you stay, but you take off, they'll probably kill you. Right. So you have to have your leg be broken so you can at least have your family, which I thought was just...
Why couldn't he pretend? Why do you say, give me the money, I'll put a cast on, and let's pretend
I wish. Yeah. I don't think Terrence would let that fly. I think he'd be like, I need to make sure that his leg's broken. So, but just the shock of him breaking the leg was like really rough, because it was a very...
Right.
Well, my old self-defense instructor was like, should you ever be attacked?
Break the leg.
He's like, kick a kneecap. He's like, you kick a kneecap, it'll automatically snap the leg. So now everyone knows it's a real thing you can do.
Kick a kneecap.
Kick the kneecap really hard. They won't be running after you. So that was just like a little side note on Theo. But I think the biggest chunk I wanted to get to, actually, let's go to Roger. And then we'll get to Elena, because Elena, I think, had the biggest storyline. Yeah. So we meet Roger's father, which is lightly referenced in the previous episode, that he's a colonel.
Right.
They come from money, and now he's in charge of, like... his father's in charge of a company that has dealings with Spiga. Mm-hmm. And so Roger goes to him in order to get information on Elena, because he wants to hold this over... Ben/Aaron's head.
Right.
And he my brain's starting to go like,
That's
I don't
okay.
want to remember anymore. I'm like, don't do this, not right now. But Roger's father, of course, like I think everyone here has like a motive in the green zone. He's like, I'll be more than happy to get the information on her, and I'll even bring her to you, as long as you get your brother to agree to go to a place called Windrush, a school, basically like a living situation, because he's has a
They say
a mental injury.
So that, yeah, he has
Yeah.
yeah.
And so his amygdala is basically been damaged, and so he's almost kind of autistic in a sense, because he doesn't really make eye contact. He likes uniformity and.
Wasn't that through the attempted engineering of the child?
I don't think.
I thought they tried to engineer him and in birth.
This is, I think, actually, they have another son. So I'm blanking on this particular son's name, but Mitchell. So Mitchell, the middle child, I think he's Roger's like blood brother.
Got it.
And then they have a basically Adam is the other son that the colonel had with his new wife that has been genetically engineered.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure if Mitchell is. I wasn't perfectly clear on like how he came to be. I know he has a. It seems like he's had some type of damage, or he's been hit in some way that caused that, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Because Adam is basically the link that allows for Mitchell to agree to go to Windrush, as long
Right.
as because he resents the birth of Adam as much as Roger does, and they both resent their
They
father.
both resent their father big time, yeah.
Yeah, so it was great to kind of get like a little bit more of a backstory about Roger.
Isn't that interesting how they resent their father and Laura resents her mother?
Yeah.
There's a lot of resentment amongst...
There's a lot of
yeah.
parental resentment in the Green
Yeah.
Zone families. Well,
Interesting.
rich families.
Rich families.
No comment. Maybe there's not enough love.
Could be.
Could be. But we kind of get a big thing that Roger tried to do was just was to pull a move on Hendrik, who he doesn't realize is a good friend of Ben's, or sure, an acquaintance of Ben's. And he goes to him to get the I guess the file on Elena. So he ends up kind of being blocked off, and
Right.
blocked off by Hendrik, and finding a great way in for Ben down the road. But I don't know. I think overall, I really enjoyed just seeing Roger operate.
He's interesting. I mean, it's just he's got greed, the quest for power,
Yeah.
the ambition, like a disgusting ambition. Like
Yeah, he wants to succeed on his own terms outside of his father, because even his father was like, "You could have whatever you want if you stay with my business."
right, but he's willing to do whatever it takes. He'll step on you. He'll kill you if he has to. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Would he kill? I don't know if he'd kill.
He'd eat a rat.
He would eat a rat. That was stupid of him. But yeah, so I think it was nice to see him explored a little bit. I don't really think they're going to do too much more with him. Like I predicted last week, they probably should kill him. But,
I think we'll see him disappear at some point here.
probably. It's just no way he can last. But it was nice to kind of see somebody catch Ben. Because up until this point, we haven't really seen... It seemed like Ben had been kind of coasting through for the past 6 years.
He's done pretty well.
He's done pretty well.
been
And
smooth,
nobody's
yeah.
really questioned him. So to have Roger come through and just kind of blow that all to
Kinda catch
smithereens
him,
in
yeah.
a sense has been great to see.
Yeah, that's added some good conflict.
Yeah,
for
exactly. All right. Well, I think the biggest storyline is Elena then. So we kind of get an idea of how she ended up where she's at, or not necessarily like how she did, but like the door has been opened to that possibility.
Right.
So she doesn't get the scholarship, and that's never really explained as to why. They say like basically that she came in second, But even that feels kind of like
Kind
a
of
setup.
contrived, could be. I mean, she's a pretty young girl, and
Yeah, and the woman that they send to say that she didn't get it, like, immediately jumps to like, but
we've got something else.
but
for
we've
you.
got something else, and you're very pretty, and we can make you property of Spiga if you're willing to do it.
God, could you imagine being in that position? You got your family. Like, I'm assuming that she's going to be sending money to her family. Is that the?
Yeah, if
So she's going to provide for the family,
you could provide for the family if you sign the contract. Essentially, you'll make all the money.
which is essentially what they do anyway in trafficking and stuff like that, right? So,
And sex trafficking,
yeah.
sending money to the family.
Well, I mean, if they're nice sex traffickers.
No,
not really.
I mean,
I know some get involved where they start thinking, well, or they'll do it for that reason. But
usually
they're
from
not, it's
I
not
mean,
the bag over the head, and
I don't know too much about sex trafficking. I know I've only heard very few stories, but usually there's the threat of harm to the family. So
Right.
should you try to run, we know where your family is. We will go after your family.
or we'll protect your family if you're with us, and we can't guarantee their safety if you're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That kind of idea. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, it depends. There's very different types of sex trafficking. Like, this is something where it's not necessarily like these women are being kidnapped in the middle of the night. It's more of a situation of like, your life is so bad right now, we could offer you this and it could be so much better. And I think that is a complicated situation to be put in as a woman at that point, because a lot of, and I mean, I don't know, I'm speaking generally, I don't know in particularly like what it's like to be a prostitute. I don't know any prostitutes, but
Right.
a lot of the time when you get to that point, it's because you just need to survive. And whether that's because you have a family or because you don't feel like you have any other options.
So it's real similar, though. It's like
It's very
a
similar
very-
in that mindset of like, well, what else can I do at this point?
Right.
So,
And didn't they burn down the father's place?
um,
If I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken. Didn't they burn down his place right at the time where all this stuff was going on?
yeah. So
time
there is but we don't know who did that yet.
We don't know who did it. Yeah.
So it could be, as of right now, it's leaning towards it being Tino, who's the guy who kind of runs everything.
Right.
So Ben comes in and kind of disrupts that. He kind of blocks them from getting her, at least at that point,
Yeah.
to sign on the dotted line and become property of the company. And he basically does that by kind of swinging it like, well, I do work for Tino and I do work for the person around here, and you won't make it out alive
Right.
if
right,
you do this
right.
right now.
Yeah.
So that was kind of great to see, but it was also nice to see because I wasn't expecting them to. This is awful, but I was pleasantly surprised and happy to hear Elena speak in Spanish because I wasn't sure if they were going to play with that. Like, I could tell to a certain extent, like, okay, well, these are obviously people of color. Are they gonna acknowledge that?
Right,
Or
right.
are they gonna leave it up in the air? Like, Ben is obviously the actor who plays Ben is obviously like a person of color.
Now, where is he
somebody-
from? He's from Croatia or something, did we say?
No. He's Welsh, but he's also Venezuelan and like one other thing I can't remember. But so
So do you feel like now, because I remember we did the first show together,
Mm-hmm.
and you weren't feeling there was as much diversity in it at that point. Are you feeling more like there's more diversity in it now, or?
the idea of okay, I will say it's diverse. I don't think it was necessarily that an issue of like it not being diverse so much as it was just of the way they toy with the diversity, which I kind of referenced in episode 2 or 3. There is a weirdness about like how, yes, all the people from the green zone, if they've grown up in the green zone, at least the people we've been introduced to so far, like the older people, are white. Julianne, played by Dennis Haysbert, who is black, is more of like the
rough
brawn,
guy,
the
yeah,
tough guy,
yeah.
has a military background. And then all the people who live in the red zone, at least for the most part, are either what we would probably consider now like lower class. I mean, that's
Right.
what they are, but
So they have no
you have
money.
people who like if they're white, then they're the toughest looking white people. They're like
Interesting.
with the tattoos and everything. And everyone else is a person of color.
Right.
So it still
I didn't.
that, like,
I'm not looking through that
stereotype.
lens, but I do get how you would see that, and it's like, so it's kind of like I was kind of blind to that, you know.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
even it's a weird, because I was thinking about that when I was driving over. I was like, well, sure, it's diverse, but is it playing with? Is it doing diversity a service, or is it just kind of reinforcing what we already think of certain?
See, my opinion is like the more we get
Cultures,
diversity
anyway.
in is doing it a service, however it's coming in. But I do understand what you're saying.
Wait, what was that?
As the more they bring diversity into the picture, because we're saying there's not enough diversity. So as it comes more and more into the picture, it's better. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's coming in a stereotyped way.
It is coming in a stereotyped way, and I am not that surprised because Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are the producers on it. So,
But don't you think they're trying on that front? Or no?
I think there's trying, sure, and then there's listening. So if I were, it goes back to just kind of how at least with Matt Damon in particular has shown himself to behave recently, like with the debate of the Great Wall and him talking about how, people are upset because they think that we whitewashed the story of the Great Wall in China.
Well, they kind of did, didn't they? I mean,
So they're like, well, maybe you should see the movie before you know what it's all about. I'm like, I'm sorry, but like,
right.
honestly, you wouldn't be there at that particular time in history.
Right,
nobody
right.
that looks like Matt Damon is going to be in China at that particular time in history.
That's funny.
Like, and if he is, I don't think he's going to be like the leader of anything. So I get the trying, but I think at this point in 2016, the trying has already happened. Like, we've already been trying.
Quit trying and get there. Is that
like,
what you're
get
saying?
there. So, if every time you see, and I'm sure people are gonna be like, well, no, there's a black guy in the green zone, and then there's the Middle Eastern dude in the green zone.
There's counter arguments for everything.
Sure.
Actually, the guy from Inazagi that came in the last episode was
the lead guy. He was African American and black, but that's still kind of like great. There's always going to be that situation of like in the background you'll see like a black person in the green zone, or you'll see somebody who is in the top in the green zone. But we also don't know enough about that guy to say, is he any different from like a Julian
Well, I was going to say
character?
it's not because we could say it's not really representative of the makeup of the land. Although if you go to Hermosa Beach, it's a little bit different from a racial perspective as well. Or if you go to downtown LA, it's you get a different mix of people. And that could just be what's representing reality, good, bad, and different. You know what I'm saying? It's like without having.
I get it. I mean, this also, we don't know quite enough about the actual world yet. So this is all based
Right,
in
we don't know what's happened, how things have.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
It's in Milwaukee. All of this is happening in Milwaukee, of all places. And so,
Well, you should be glad there's no black people there.
there are
Take
plenty
Milwaukee.
of
Take Milwaukee.
black people in Milwaukee
joking.
right now. No, I think it's more of just like, I'm always going to have that question of like, well, how are you showcasing people of color in television at this current time, especially when you're talking about something in the future? I mean, if you're talking about something in 2074, climate change or not, I mean, a good amount of the United States of America will no longer be white by 2040.
Right. So there's an assumption of where things are headed. That's kind of like unspoken assumption, but it's right there in your face.
Yeah.
Right.
If you look at something like Westworld, where there are people of color in Westworld, and the whole idea of racial politics isn't really spoken of in Westworld, probably because they're about, I don't even know, 200 years in the future. And they are androids. So that's not something that's going to come up at least at this point in the season. Yeah. But they also...
So you like the way
shun
they
away.
handle it there?
Yeah, because you have...
I haven't watched Westworld. I love the movie, never watched the series.
Yeah, you have like politics, gender politics going on, but in terms of the racial politics, I think it's interesting how they've toyed with it. They haven't really touched on it as well, so it's not really as much a commentary there. But when you're talking about people like we are in this television show, of the idea of poverty, the 1%, and everyone else, then I think that's something you have to kind of toy with and talk about. Like, well, okay, Ben, as of right now, is being portrayed as white, but any person of color is going to look at the actor who plays Ben and go, but there's
I don't know if he's
more
being
going
portrayed
on
as
there.
white. Like, I haven't seen
Well,
that.
his father was a white man. So as of right
was he?
now, all we have, and him in his youth is played by a white actor.
Okay.
So all right now we have is him as a white man.
Got it.
So I just thought that was really interesting. But
I mean, that's what the whole thing's about, is about the divides between green and red, and it's like,
and
so
like, how does that play? So
it's a relevant conversation.
It's a relevant conversation to have, yes, especially just knowing it's 2074. How do the politics play at that particular time in the world? With this episode opening with China doing an ad about American poverty, like how do the politics of race and culture play in 2074? And I would love to have that explored more, but I also don't anticipate it.
But if the corporations took over, which is essentially what's happening in this, do we think that we would see a continuation of the desire for diversity, or do we think that the people that are running the corporations might really be a bunch of old white guys that are there for oppression,
I mean, at this point, it's kind of
You know what
clear
I'm saying?
that
It's like it could be that there was no change in their vision of the future here.
well, if that's the case, I mean, majority of the world are people of color.
Right.
So should America face like a catastrophe and a good amount of its population be wiped out? I mean, you're speaking of the coastal areas. Yeah, if Milwaukee is like a major hub for America, it's going to have a good amount of white people still there because that's just who happens to live in Wisconsin.
Right.
And that's understandable. But
because we don't know how many corporations there are. We know that we hear
we
about
know there's the two. So we have Inizagi and Spiga. I think that's it because they tend to be fighting for most of the land, at least in regards to the United States.
Right.
Or well, no, even Canada is something that's like
I'm trying to remember
off.
how far I heard them say that they were going to go. But yeah. And then because they said that they were under attack in Micronesia, I think.
Yeah, so they are kind of toying with that whole idea of
global.
1984, like how we don't quite know how the world is situated at this time. We know that, like, yeah, we do see the ad, and if it's not Chinese, I apologize. I don't know. If it's Japanese,
We're not going to call
cool.
you racist. Don't worry.
Thank you. I apologize. I just don't know. The Asian language, and the commercial. But does that mean that if it's China, is China just China, or is China now?
Inizagi.
Is China now like China and the Middle East and Russia and Europe? Like, so how do they work now? Because that's kind of toyed with in 1984 of like, well,
because we're not talking about the same
States is
countries.
this part, exactly. We're not talking about the countries. We're talking about these corporations. So that's just something to question as well. But to get back to the episode.
Yeah. That's
before
interesting
we wrap
stuff,
up.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it's interesting stuff. With Elena, I forgot where we left off. So she doesn't end up signing with the woman to become a prostitute. But we also kind of get just a better understanding of like how money works in this particular world, with Ben taking young Theo to go do the scam, and just how easy that was to scam $20,000 off of that guy in his truck. But did you quite understand like how that worked? So it was the conversion rate, and if you happen to go in with a certain amount of money,
right,
then the conversion rate hit. Yeah, if the conversion rate hit high for U.S. dollars in that moment, and you were trading it in for euros, and you got a certain amount of euros.
You got I think it's just like trading currency now, but they were setting it up somehow.
Yeah. So and it almost seems as if
maybe they were fixing the machine.
Well, no, he was scanning the machine. So basically, when he turned in the American dollars, he got euros, but he made the cost of the
Something spiked,
dollar
right?
something. I think the euro spiked, so he ended up getting more for his.
Right.
Unless I'm going to Europe, I don't think about
It's like it's like currency trading in real life.
Yeah.
The only thing was somehow they either knew it was going to spike or they fixed it to spike.
He did.
For
He
a
fixed
moment.
it at a certain time to spike. But I thought what was really interesting is that there was no sense that because it's Milwaukee, you had to have American dollars anymore. Like it was like,
That's
as
true.
long as you have this type of money, it's worth this at this certain moment.
That's interesting because there was another scene where the Girl Scout had come to the house and she says, "We'll take anything, American dollars, we'll take yen, we'll take whatever you got."
Exactly. So I thought that was very interesting that whole idea of how we set up currency now, it's kind of been broken down.
Right.
So it's like, well, what do you have that's going to work?
That
It
works
may not
that
be
way
worth this.
in some other countries, and in certain countries they'll take whatever you got, within reason.
Within reason. As long as it's worth something. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, if I have 20 euros in a different country, they'll be like, well, we'll take it. but
We'll
it's not
take
gonna
it,
be worth
but
much.
it's
So that was a nice little touch to see that. And then it ties all the way back to Ben going to Elena being like, here's $20,000. You don't have to go off and join the company. You don't have to worry about not making your rent. Your family's taken care of. And it ends up she gets the scholarship because the
Right.
person cheated.
Yeah.
So I thought that I don't know. I felt like that was kind of an unnecessary button to hit,
Yeah, not necessarily.
especially knowing like what happened right after.
Doesn't
with,
follow the plot line.
It doesn't follow the plot line. You don't really need it. It was like there's this one moment to see if like she would run off with him or if she would stay, and he's like, well, if you got the scholarship, then you have to stay. Like, don't run off. But and then right after that, their entire restaurant gets firebombed.
Right.
And so it was kind of like, okay, well, that's where now we kind of have a better understanding of like, at least when I saw it, I was like, okay, well, Elena is probably going to go and get that money because even the money that she could have used to pay for her father's restaurant has now been burned.
Right.
So that's why she does it. In any case, that ties back a little bit to Roger because we see
Now, do we get the sense that Ben's in love with her?
with Elena.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in a
It's
relationship.
pretty clear. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't talk too much about it, but even when, well, no, that's skipping ahead. Never mind. So, never mind. We'll get there next week. But it ties back a little bit to Roger because he's kind of having all of this as a flashback. Ben is when Roger finally goes to his father and is like, okay, I want to meet Elena. And the last shot we see is finally of Ben having confirmation, like face-to-face confirmation that this is Elena.
Right.
So I guess on that note, I think we can go ahead into predictions. 'Cause
Predictions.
We've gotten the whole episode.
Oh my gosh.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV prediction.
All right, you're up.
I'm up. Predictions. Man, this is a tough one because I'm trying to think of all the different directions that this show could go. Because I mean, once what's going to happen to the relationship with Ben and Laura? What's going to happen with his status with the company? With everything else now that Elena's entering the picture?
In play, yeah.
Yeah. So, because it really has the potential of changing the entire arc and direction of the show.
Yeah.
I'll just pull one out of the air, and by that he gets found out and they go on the run.
I hope not. Where's he gonna run? He's in Milwaukee.
Yeah, but he's gonna run with Elena.
I think Roger's got to go. I do think that, and then also, I feel like it's really gonna come down to what Elizabeth does. So I think if Ben is found out, it's going to be Elizabeth having like a power play to either keep him safe or not keep him safe for the benefit of her daughter and unborn child. Because I think it's going to really come down to how divorce works. And if there isn't divorce, like then what if he is, because we've already kind of like toyed with this, like if he is shunned or if he is in any way put out, then that's a risk for Laura, and Elizabeth's not going to want that. So if there's no divorce and he ends up being found out, then I think Elizabeth
I don't know.
will
I think
protect
if they
him.
found out, I think Elizabeth would come down on him rather than trying to protect him.
I don't think she would come down on him only because she wouldn't want Laura to be affected. Because if in any way, like, they decide that Laura had some input or helped him, and they could just do that. They could just say, well, she obviously helped him. How could she live with this man for all these years and not know? Then that puts her in a position. So it's probably going to come down to, like, Elizabeth versus Julian, because Julian's already suspicious.
Interesting.
And I don't think he cares enough about either him, Elizabeth, or Laura
Yeah.
to let that stop them.
What's interesting, though, about him is that Julian's a security tough guy, right? What's interesting about him is he seems to have some caring in him. Like when he goes to see the family of the dead prostitute.
He goes in person,
Yeah.
He seems to have a heart, and that's just interesting to see, like, how the generation dynamics play out. So, because it's clear that Julian and Elizabeth remember a time before the green zone, red zone. Because we also know that Ben only started to actually live through as a refugee when he was 12. So we'll see how they play with that. I would like a little bit more just kind of worldview in the show. I think that's my biggest thing, is like if they can blow out the world a little bit more so I can understand like how things work and how they used to work.
Right.
I think that would be better. But all right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of Incorporated After Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Adrian Snow. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow. And Chris, where can
And
I
that's
follow
not
you?
even a stage name. Snow's her
my
real
real
last
name.
name. I'm Chris Howard. Reach me at Chris Howard Live on Twitter and Instagram.
Yes. And as always, please rate, subscribe on Apple, YouTube, you know, whatever thing, MapQuest. That doesn't even
MapQuest.
exist
We're not
anymore.
on
I'm just
MapQuest.
joking, you guys. All right. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.